later Vedic time period. This is early Vedic, the geographic location where early Vedic people or Rig Vedic people lived. This is 1500 to 1000. Aryans called it as Sapta Sindhva. (1500 to 1000 BC). These people migrated gradually and they occupied this region during 1000 BC to 600 BC. We are calling them as the people who lived in this region, called later Vedic people. Why we are calling them later Vedic people? Because we know about the people who lived between 1000 to 600 in this location through texts called later Vedic texts. In this location, they composed Rig Veda. By the time they reached here, the associated Vedic literature also started flourishing. Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharva Veda. Even some of the later portions of Rig Veda also entered this. We consider entire later parts of Rig Veda. Because we do not exactly know when Rig Veda started, when Rig Veda ended. This combinedly called, all these four called Samhitas. Then explanations to them called Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads. So these texts we call them as later Vedic texts. We know about these people who lived between 1000 to 600 BCE from these later Vedic texts, and we call them as later Vedic people. Between 1000 to 600 BCE, it is not that only the people whom we are knowing from these texts are alone living in this subcontinent. Around 1000 to 600 BC, if you remember, online students, can you throw some light on who are the contemporaries to later Vedic people? Any idea? Tarun, Bandana? Along with later Vedic people who were living in the subcontinent, in this location, in this location, in this location, in this part of Indian subcontinent. Any idea? Very good. Chalcolithic people. If you consider in this location, Ahar, Gilund, Balatal, Malwa culture, here Jorvi culture. When it comes to this, Neolithic, Chalcolithic people, and in this location also, this is around 1000 BC Neolithic period. If we describe, these are called Aryans. The other set we call non-Aryans. And these non-Aryans, in some places Neolithic, in some places Chalcolithic. And in some places, these traditions, along with some burial practices, we call them as megalithic. Very good. Megalithic, Chalcolithic, megalithic. And here also the tradition will continue. The later Vedic people, now gradually they are entering into new subsistence, new lifestyles, but mostly they are depending on agriculture. They were not living in urban areas. They were not living in urban areas. Urban areas we have seen in Harappan civilization way back, almost now you see 1000 BC. Before 1000 BC, almost 1500 years or 1300 years earlier, people lived in cities. Just I will explain this, then I will give you the time to write down everything. Just you listen to this. Now we are progressing in the history. Now we are at 1000 BC. And we are going to deal up to 600 BC. Before 1000, 1500 BC. Now below, before that, 2000 BC, then 2500 BC. Up to here, if we consider the northwestern part, we have to particularly specify which geographic location you are talking about when you are talking about this particular timeline. Because you cannot apply this entire timeline to every part of the Indian subcontinent. In northwestern part of India, this is the progress of history. In this part, online students, can you give some idea? Who are living? In northwestern part of India, that means we are talking about this zone. In this timeline, for example, if I go up to 7000 BC, between 7000 2500, what description we can give? What type of people were living in northwestern part of India? Yes, go ahead. What name we give those people who lived between that period? Very good. Neolithic. Mehergarh is the first place, first village, and some of them entered into Chalcolithic. Here, the peak of civilization, Indus Valley civilization. Now here, these later Vedic, later or late Harappan sites, these people called late Harappan. In some of the places, we identified a pottery called ochre colored pottery. We are calling them with this particular name, ochre colored pottery people. Now from 1500 to 1000 BC, early Vedic. Now 1000 to 600, later Vedic. And up to here, our source of understanding these people is archaeology. Because we don't have any written records up to this. But from now onwards, we have literary texts. But historians, earlier we were depending purely on literary texts, and historians don't know what happened before this. With the emergence of archaeology, now this part completely relied on archaeology because there is no possibility of literary text. But for this period, we have archaeological sources also. Timeline plus sources right up to here. Please note down this one and now this one. Start writing this. Up to here, if you have any doubts, you please ask me the doubts. Those who have written this part, please tell me or you message me that it is done. So that now next I'll go to the next slide. Tarun done, Sanju done. Yes, Bandana. Bandana Bharti, is it done? Okay, all right. Now, you note down this. This is very, very crucial to understand how we are entering into this. Because a unique way of culture is emerging now. We should not purely think that whatever culture entered into the Indian subcontinent after 1000 BC is everything belonged to Aryan traditions. Non-Aryan traditions also became part of Indian way of life after 1000 BC. To understand that, you need to know, already you can see here, before the Aryans, already other settlements are there. Now these cultural elements enter into this part, this will enter into here, here, here. So now by this time, so many cultural elements are keep on adding to the Indian culture. Cultural integration. Now in fact, it is not that I am writing here only IVC. It doesn't mean Neolithic, Chalcolithic people did not exist here. They also continued. But dominantly, this period we call the Indus Valley Civilization period. For example, during independence, freedom struggle, from 1920 to up to independence, we call Gandhian era. It doesn't mean only Gandhi was the freedom fighter. There were so many other people who were fighting along with Gandhiji. But Gandhiji represented that period, the Gandhian phase. Similarly, in world history, after French Revolution, a certain period will call Napoleonic era. It doesn't mean only Napoleon is doing everything. Other things are also going on parallelly in other parts also, even in France also. Same is the case. This period is dominated by this civilization in our history, but it doesn't mean only these people existed. Neolithic, Chalcolithic people entered. Now these Indus Valley people, we are calling them, now you can see late Harappan, new settlements, Indus Valley. Now these people also will continue. When it comes to this period, these people will come. And when it comes to this, these people will come. This is where exactly the Aryans and non-Aryans. These traditions will continuously, parallelly, they are running. Write this one, this slide very clearly. Done. Okay. All of you done? Okay. Now we have to see. Later Vedic period means in this geographic location, in this time period, how people lived. These people, in the following categories, we study them. What is their economic life? social life, politico administration, their religious life, art and architecture like literature. And the same literature also we call them, we are depending on these sources, they are also our sources. Next one, if you include economic life plus technology. Note down this. We have to study these segments step by step. How they lived economically, social life, political administration, religious life, art and architecture. Now onwards, you have to see this. It is not in isolation. Already before 1000 BC, some kind of economic activities are going on. You know how the economic life of early Vedic people. The tradition will continue, some more will be added. Social life, already some society, already some social elements came, new elements will come. Political administration is also same. You are going to see this evolution of these institutions. Note down this. Okay, done? Yes. Now you have to draw a little bit world map. We are going to understand this particular period is dominated by iron technology. Like we are calling today the information technology, the IT age, or the computer revolution. Or now onwards, you are going to see the revolution of artificial intelligence. Because technology-wise, this period is going to be dominated by these developments. Every institution, economic life, social life, political, religious, art, and everything is going to be dominated by this new technological revolution. Same thing happened during Industrial Revolution. So if you see this, Industrial Revolution has changed these institutions completely, altered in the entire human history itself. Emergence of computers and information technology changed Now we are talking about artificial intelligence is going to change in future. We are going to see revolutionary changes. Similarly, in 1000 BC, the dominant technology which changed these institutions is the iron. Further, just give one small map. Emergence of iron. And this iron, even though suppose in 1950s, 60s also we have computers, people were operating. But we never called that particular period as information technology age, IT age. That IT software industries developed after 1970s, 80s, by 1990s, 2000s, it became very dominant. That period we call IT age. But IT was continuously progressing much before that. Similarly, around 1000 BC it started dominating, but it doesn't mean it emerged for the first time in 1000 only. Just to give this map, old map we need to give. First you start like this. This is equator. First you write about Africa. Draw this one. Sorry. This is Tropic of Cancer. Equator. Tropic of Cancer. India. This is Black Sea, Caspian Sea, and this is the location where migrations of Harappans into different regions. Now, if we go to 6,000, 5,000, this one near Black Sea. In this location, 6th millennium BC, iron appeared. So now you keep comparing what was happening in India also. 6th millennium BC means 600, 6000 BC, 7000 BC if you remember, Mehergarh. First village around 7000 BC. Here Neolithic stage started. Around this time period, in 6th millennium BC, iron appeared near Black Sea. Naturally, any technology, it will take some time, gradually it will go. By 5000 BC and 4000, 3000s, by this time, Mesopotamia plus Egypt. This area is dominated by Mesopotamia and Egyptian civilization. This one. Now, in this area, by 1000 BC, around this, Indian subcontinent. Here, iron appeared initially from copper. Because this time, even though iron was not dominant, but copper is the dominant one. That's why Mesopotamians also used bronze. In this zone, Indus Valley people also used bronze, copper plus tin combination. When you are extracting copper, when you are smelting it, some iron content was also there. That's why it was not on a large scale. The evidence of iron when it comes to Indian subcontinent also comes around 1000 BC. This is also the location. In Indian subcontinent, Afghan plus Pakistan plus here in Deccan, Karnataka plateau, it contains iron resources. From 1000 BC onwards, the appearance of metal started. Now, by 1000 to 600 BCE, now this area is going to be dominated by iron. At the same time, in Deccan also, iron is. So, if you say in the Indian subcontinent context, iron emergence around 1000 BC, we consider. Up to here, you draw it. I will give few words, few lines. You please note down. You write up to here, then you tell me whether it is done or not. Okay, done? All of you done? Anubhav, is it done? Emergence of iron. Now this iron is going to dominate the economic life of later Vedic people. So as a history optional student, continuously keep tracking. If you are studying about later Vedic period, don't restrict your knowledge to only later Vedic period. Always try to see what happened earlier. If you just recollect what happened earlier, it will be easy. Just it is going to be the continuation of the previous tradition in most of the cases. That is how nowadays questions are also coming. I will give you the questions also now. You are going to see it. Anubhav, which one? Which part you need explanation? Last sentence. This one. Suppose if you are studying about later Vedic people, don't restrict your knowledge or idea, mind just to the later Vedic people. If you are talking about economic life of later Vedic, before that just keep thinking what happened before later Vedic period. That means before 1000 BC, already late Harappan people are there, OCP people. Before that Harappan people were there. Before that Neolithic, Chalcolithic people were there. Their economic life, social life is also going to influence the people who are living in 1000 BC. Yes, evolution process. For example, today in GS1, we have art and culture, for example, let us. We are in 2000 AD. Now, when we are studying about society, we will not study society what is there exactly today. Some of these elements, we will study those elements which entered in this age. At the same time, some elements which entered into our Indian way of life before this particular age, 1000 years ago, 2000 years ago, 3000 years ago, some religious elements, social elements, they are continuous in process. That is what we need to think always as a history optional student. Then only you will give very good analysis in your answers. Linkages, very good. So we have to link with what happened before that. Now, economic life before that. Now, economic life of later Vedic people. Side just you give this particular box. In that box, roughly you mention India map. It need not be a big one, small is enough. Geography. This is the geography of later Vedic people. You can say this. This is present day geographic condition. These brown areas you will see, this is not greenery. Greenery less means less amount of forest. When you see this part, you are going to see large tracts of forest area. Large tracts of forest area. Wherever rivers are there, and surrounding these rivers, lot of forest. Now, when these people enter to this location, this geographic location naturally is going to influence their economic condition. This is early Vedic people. These people are later Vedic. When it comes to early Vedic people, they migrated. Here, pastoralism. You can see this. Even today also, these desert areas, semi-desert areas are dominated by sheep rearing, goat rearing, pastoral activities. In West Asia also, in Central Asia also, even today also, because of the limitations of the geography. Now, when Aryans reached here, they continued pastoralism, agriculture beginning. Now, once these people entered here, now this area is alluvial plain, lot of forest, fertility of the soil. All these geographic elements naturally favored agriculture. While you are writing, alluvial soil, alluvial soil, Ganga Yamuna Doab. When it comes to rivers, Ganga river system. That means Ganga plus its tributaries, including Yamuna. And these areas are also dominated by thick forests. Right up to here, this geography is going to dominate. Now these forests they are going to clear by iron. Now technology also in favor of them, geography also in favor of them. They are going to utilize both these advantages and entering into new way of life. Right up to here, then we will move on to the next step. alluvial soil located in Ganga Yamuna Doab, rivers are flowing, forests are there. Now they are going to utilize these geographic resources to their advantage. Then next. We are in agriculture only. There is a Brahmana called Shatapada Brahmana. Shatapada Brahmana. This explains, provide evidence, references to agricultural practices. When it comes to crops, in later Vedic time period, do you remember in early Vedic time period which crop dominated them? Pastoralism, nomadicism, semi-nomadic life. But when it comes to agriculture, one important crop dominated early Vedic period. Do you remember? Very good. Barley. Now, in addition to barley, they are going to cultivate other crops also now. Rice also, wheat also, along with barley. Barley is going to be continued. This is why I asked you to linkage with the previous age. If you study only rice, wheat, barley, that's one kind of understanding. But barley is already there, that is also continued. In addition to that, two more crops are going to dominate. When it comes to crops, barley, rice, wheat, and particularly rice, Aryan tradition, in Vedic text, this term is mentioned to this. And barley, you know, yava. And wheat, goduma. So these words you are going to see, and barley, rice, wheat, in addition to that, lentils. These are the various crops. I will give few sentences, you keep writing. First you do this, then I will give 2 sentences, you please write. Write this sentence. Plowing. Plowing. Later Vedic texts. Later Vedic texts speak of 6, 8, 12, and even 24 oxen yoked. 24 oxen yoked to the plow. So these many oxen used for plowing purpose. Next sentence. This may be an exaggeration, like using 6, 8, 12, 24, may be an exaggeration. But it definitely shows, what we can understand is definitely plowing was an important activity of agriculture. but it definitely shows that plowing was done. Plowing was done with oxen, and wooden plowshare. Wooden plowshare could have been the dominant one. Could have been the dominant one because light soil of Gangetic plains. This is why how geography dominates history. Geography, history go together. Depending on the geographic resources, people will try to live in a different conditions. That makes history. Light soil. Now when it comes to the hilly areas, they cannot do this one. They have to depend on some other way of life. And here subsistence is different. Dominant one, light soil of Gangetic plains. Though iron was used but the archaeological evidence of iron plowshare is limited. Definitely they know iron. Probably they have used it for plowing purpose also. But probably this is the dominant one because archaeologically not much iron plowshares were not discovered. Now can you recollect some stories associated with, now I will draw this one, 1000 BC to 600 BC. If we see this is the timeline where Kurukshetra, the land associated with Mahabharat. Whatever story narrated by Mahabharat is associated with later Vedic period, and it has to be between 1000 BC to 600 BC. So most like around 850 BC, scholars are expecting that around 850 BC, this Mahabharata incident would have happened. Now, this area is near Delhi, Madura, Western UP, the Western UP. As the time progresses, This area is associated with Ramayana, Ayodhya, and the story associated with Ramayana. But you see this geographically. Here early Vedic people came to here, settled. Now later they might have migrated gradually and settled here. Same. Both these texts, they talk about Vedic practices. But this is where the historians and those who believe religion are going to apart. Mahabharata and Ramayana. Do you remember when I was explaining about a historical timeline? This is the timeline. Generally, whenever we say about history happened like 6000 BC, 5000, like that. When it comes to Puranas, Vedic tradition, do you remember how the timeline of, generally, the timeline of universe is imagined by Vedic people? They imagined in the form of yugas. Do you remember what are various yugas imagined by Vedic people with respect to timeline? How many yugas are there? It was asked in prelims also. Even in prelims also it was asked once. Do you remember that? Kali, yes, 4 ages. 4 ages, Dwapar, Kali, Treta. First one, Krita Yoga. Krita, then Treta, then Dwapar, then Kali. But in terms of numbers, our Vedic tradition will not give any numbers associated with these. But this is how the timeline is imagined. In Puranas also, the stories, the narration of so many stories associated with these things. Satyug, Tretayug, Dwaparayug, Kaliyug. Now, if we see this comes first, this should be followed by this, and this should be followed by this, and this should be followed by this. That means this is the oldest age, then this is the newest. Now you see this. This is what contradiction with respect to the traditions of later Vedic text and the timeline. This go against each other. Geographically, if we are saying geographically first settlements this area, then this, then this. Then if we go by this, Kritayug somewhere might be in this location, or you consider this as Kritayug. It must be in this geographic location. And now this is Tretayug. This must be Dwaparayug. Or we don't know what exactly they are imagining. But what I am trying to say here is, it must be, this is Kretayug, Dwaparayug, Tretayug, Tirtayug, Dwaparayug and Kaliyug. But you observe this. Geographically, this area should be earlier. And this should be later. That means Mahabharata incident should have happened earlier. Ramayana story should have happened later. That's what in the natural geographical process. But if you study the story, this is related to Treta Yuga and this is related to Dwapara Yuga. Now if you see this Dwapara Yuga here, third one, the third story happened first, second story happened later. This is how the timeline, but this shows here the timeline of Dwapara Yuga and Treta Yuga now going contradicting to each other. But if we study this narration, this is somewhat more close to tribal traditions that shows the natural earlier stage of Vedic time, Vedic period. If we see this one, this is more orthodox in nature. And by this time period, if you see Mahabharata and Ramayana, during Ramayana time period, the institutions evolved more. So, more evolution, refined evolution, the kind of institutions, whatever we are, Vedic practices, religious practices, beliefs, it appears in this time period, it evolved better. So, in the historical evolution, this must have happened earlier, this must have happened later. But the narration of the story goes against this. In the story, this happened earlier, this happened later. So, this is what exactly how historians or scholars and those who believe in the religious scriptures, purely on religious scriptures for history. That is why this is where the religious scriptures we cannot purely rely on for historical understanding. This is the, you can say, as cultural angle. Culture wise, this is one of the greatest works of entire humanity itself, not only this particular land. You could take anywhere in this world. In this time period, 850, in this particular time period, this kind of literary development is phenomenal. In that respect, it's very great achievement of the Indian subcontinent people. But if you purely depending on these texts for reconstructing history, we may not be not correct. So this is where historian and those who purely believe on religious texts for history are going to be contradictory. As a scholar, purely academic purpose, if you want to study history as a rational subject, scientific subject, then you have to clearly segregate which is legend, which is actual fact. You write up to here, then I will give later. Because these traditions, we are going to use the same traditions for reconstructing our economic life also. Because we don't have any other reference. Archaeology is not giving much reference. Only evidence available for us is these texts. We have to study their economic life through these texts only. But we have to differentiate between legend and the reality. Right up to here, then we will move on. Up to here, all of you understood? This is very, very crucial part for history optional student. If you get this clarity, and it will not create much trouble for you. Note down this. Just you tell me if you have done it. Then we will move on to the next. We are continuing agriculture. As part of agriculture, I am explaining this. Now we are going to link with these developments with agriculture. All right, now you draw proper India map, because we are going to mention few places, and these places and agriculture are going to be interlinked. Now you need not to draw the southern part, because our focus is on Gangetic Valley. This is the location of Hastinapur. The Mahabharata story is associated. Madura. In Mahabharata story, Lord Krishna and his brother Balarama. For agriculture point of view, the weapon of Balarama is plough. So this shows how important this particular plough means. And that shows in the earlier stages, agriculture is a very noble profession. Agriculture is very noble profession. And you have to see, this is how our history is evolving gradually. Whenever some new profession emerges, it is almost going to be very sacred one. Sacred profession. Gods themselves practice this profession. Now, if we go to this Ramayana story, Kosala, Ramayana, and here Videha. Remember this, Videha, Kosala is birthplace of Rama, and Videha, Sita. Father of Sita, Janaka. And the story in Ramayana narrates, when Janaka was ploughing, Sita was discovered. This shows King Janaka, king himself ploughing. You can see, king himself is ploughing. Here Balarama, God himself, is wielding the weapon, plough as a weapon. So this shows, in fact, the term Sita also associated with agriculture. And in the later period also, during Mauryan time period, in the administration of Mauryans, there is one department, and head of the department we call Sitadhyaksha. This department is agriculture department. Are you able to connect how same literary sources is the evidence for history? And this is how, in the initial stages, how agriculture profession is very important. Revenue from agriculture, yes, Sitadhyaksha. Sitadhyaksha is the head of agriculture department. Agriculture is the main source of revenue. This is the initial stage in the evolution of human history. Agriculture has given so noble profession. But later time periods, after in the later parts of Vedic and in the Mauryan, post-Mauryan, Gupta time period, later this agriculture is associated with Shudras. But in the initial stages, it is a noble profession. Even gods themselves are ready to plow. That shows the importance of agriculture. gradually when society moving, this agriculture limited to Shudras, slaves, Shudras. They were used for agriculture. Those who were using agriculture as their livelihood, they were given the lowest status in the Varna system. This is how you need to see in the beginning stage how it is, in the later stages how society is moving. You note down up to here. This shows in later Vedic time period, agriculture is one of the important professions. That's what we need to reconstruct at this point of time. Note down this, then tell me whether it was done, then we will move on to the next part. This development in later historical development. Done? Okay. All right. In addition to that, you add one more point. This is purely in terms of Vedic texts we are saying. Even in the later time period, Buddha belonged to even further. Lumbini, then he was in the eastern part of UP and Bihar region. You just include this also. Even Buddha was also represented as a person who is plowing the field in some of the monuments. So here you just note down in the last one. Gautama Buddha is depicted plowing with oxen in Bodh Gaya. Even Gautama Buddha was also depicted plowing with oxen in Bodh Gaya. So this shows how important this profession is. And later gradually it is assigned to slaves, Sudras in later time period. Arts and crafts now. When it comes to arts and crafts, this is like industrial activities. Depending on raw material, we can see this. For example, clay. If you take clay as the raw material, then can you Give me some examples with clay as raw material, what type of products, manufacturing products we can. Already we have seen in Chalcolithic period also, Neolithic period also, Harappan period also, with clay, what type of, very good, terracotta. Any other example? Terracotta images we can make. Other one? Terracotta, very good, Anubhav. Pottery. Pottery. When it comes to Harappan people, black on red ware, that is a pottery. When it comes to Vedic people, later Vedic people, PGW, pottery. Painted graveware pottery was associated with them. This is if you take clay as the raw material. Another one, even bricks also can be made. Some could be sun-dried bricks, some could be burnt bricks. Sun-dried or burnt bricks. And particularly, these two are very essential in reconstructing later Vedic life through archaeological evidences. Archaeological evidence, once we excavate, we get pottery and we get the bricks. This is where, when it comes to Harappans and later Vedic people, or Vedic people versus Harappan in this debate, later Vedic text having these stories, Mahabharata and Ramayana, and these two are associated with a lot of urban life, very active urban life. If urban life is very active, that means burnt bricks, buildings must have been with burnt bricks, like Harappan people. And in fact, Harappan people lived almost 1,000 years earlier to them. Suppose if 1,000 years earlier itself, if you have very good technology in burnt bricks, after 1,000 years, it should have been even in a better condition. That means later Vedic people should have been living in a very big urban areas. But archaeology is not giving this evidence. Because burnt brick buildings are very rare. And also the urban life is just it is beginning. It is not as at a high scale as Harappan people. This is one of the archaeological evidence to disprove the theory that later Vedic people lived in very strong or very good urban areas. Archaeological wise also, these two are important. These are also there. Then when it comes to forest, if you take wood as the raw material, now these people are having, if you see this, chariot making. During this time period, chariots, horses are very, very important one. Chariot making. Carpenters. Particularly chariot making profession was given even very high status. Carpenters. In Mahabharata, do you remember any character? Plowing, yes, carpentry, plowshare. Plow, wooden plow. Do you remember in Mahabharata character, if you know it? One character is associated with chariot making family. Even though he was born as Kshatriya, but he was raised as a person as in the family of chariot maker. Do you remember? Karn, very good. That shows those who are making chariots are given high status in the society. That is another example. So this is how history we have to interpret our text in this manner. Forest, wood as the reference. Now agriculture. Agriculture like cotton, that is weavers. Weaving is another profession, industrial activity or arts and crafts. Then metal. By this time period, copper is not something new. Coppersmiths. Now iron also came. Ironsmiths. Jewelry like gold, silver. So if you go by this raw material, different raw materials, different professions. Yes, boat making, clothes, leather, ornaments, cornelian, agate, jade, gold, all these jewelry. It could be semi-precious stones. Now you can include, if you use stone as the raw material, and you can include to this jewelry. Semi-precious stones. So in this framework, you just try to add as many industrial activities as possible. And in addition to that, if you include animals or animals' skin, leather working. So these are various types of industrial activities that are there. Yes, amulets also must be there, because in Harappan time period itself we have such things, and definitely it will enter this. Animal husbandry, goats, sheep, wool, very good. So animals, wool. So if you take here, weavers are there, and wool also you can use for cloths. Yes, very good. Now this is the structure. Now you keep adding. If you come across a new thing, then you keep adding to this structure. Because in mostly questions come like economic life of later Vedic. You have to write about agriculture few points, art and culture few points, trade few more points likewise. And now, in addition to that, glass. Glass making was also there. Clay, wood, agriculture, metal, animal, glass making. All of you have written up to here. Then we are going to do trade and commerce. Shall I go to the next slide? This framework is almost universal from now onwards, because by this time, okay, please draw this. By this time period itself, we are seeing the evolution of these developments. Now, by the time Mahajanapadas, Mauryans, post-Mauryans, everything is going to be repeated. On top of it, a few more things we are going to get. Done? All of you done? Now, trade and commerce. Trade and commerce. For trade and commerce, medium of exchange is very, very crucial. When it comes to Mahajanapada time period, we have punch-marked coins. That comes later time. That means after later Vedic time period. But in this time period, Nishka. But archaeological wise, we do not get no evidence of, no coin evidence. This is the term mentioned in texts. Nishka, probably it is a kind of jewelry. It's a kind of jewelry. Probably they have used Nishka. If there are no coins, means mostly barter system. Mostly barter system. Short distance trade, natural, even long distance trade was also there in the later Vedic text. Even sea voyages were also mentioned. Now you see this, how different professions are emerging. Agriculture we have seen. Agriculture is one kind of profession. Arts and crafts, one profession. Trade, one profession. In the end of the later Vedic period, we are going to see all these professions. The Brahmanical texts are going to segregate those who are doing agriculture, those who are doing trade, those who are ruling, those who are performing the sacrifices. Different social evolution setup is emerging now. You can see these different type of professions. Next one, when it comes to urbanization, proto-urban areas. Proto-urban areas. Urban areas means it should be large-scale settlements, burnt bricks. We did not find those kind of archaeological evidence. And at max, we can say proto-urban elements. We cannot call it as a fully village also. We cannot call it as a fully urban area also in the middle. Proto-urban areas, examples, you can give here examples. Hastinapur, same names you find. Madura, Kaushambi. Kaushambi means this is Allahabad region, Prayagraj. Near Kaushambi, near Allahabad, Kaushambi. Ayodhya. These are all beginning of. Archaeologically, these are not giving much urban elements like Indus Valley civilization. All of you written up to here? Then we will go to Society of Later Vedic People. All of you done? Can I go to next slide? All right. Society. Now, how this society was there? For this, you need to understand. By this time, you have already got idea how different cultures are going mixing in this geographic location. Now we are here. Aryans. Around the same time, non-Aryans were also living. Who are these non-Aryans? Successors to the previous non-Aryans means late Harappan, OCP people, Neolithic people, Chalcolithic people, and those who cannot be described as these and Aryans, other tribal people. In the same geographical location, you find Aryans also, non-Aryans also. Now, continuous interaction within Aryans also. Within Aryans, you have social conditions. Within non-Aryans, they have their social life. They were following one social life. These people are following different social life. When mixing takes place, a new type of social life also emerges. Now, this is the complex dynamic scenario. These people follow different language. For example, language. Aryans follow Sanskrit, non-Sanskrit. Now you are going to see mixing of these two also. That is why some of the non-Sanskrit words enter into Vedic literature. For example, some Munda tribe words. Those who live in Chota Nagpur area, probably today we are Chota Nagpur area, today we know that Munda people are living in Chota Nagpur plateau, but earlier they might be somewhere here. And finally, the remnants of Munda tribe now we are able to identify in Chota Nagpur plateau today, but earlier they might be here somewhere. So this is how non-Sanskrit words also enter into Vedic literature. Non-Sanskrit or non-Aryan social life also entered, non-Aryan religious life also entered, and Aryan way of life also entered into non-Aryans. Today also we are seeing that. Tribals versus non-tribals, for example. In tribal people areas, other non-tribal elements will enter. For example, today context, education if you take, national education policy is designed at the capital level. That national education policy is percolated throughout the India. Even the tribal pockets, they have different type of education system if you don't touch them. But if they come to the schools, obviously they are going to study this curriculum. So this is how the integration of people is going to take place. This is how the Indian culture is emerging. A person from this remotest part also, a person in the mid of capitals also, reading the same syllabus. That shows the same common education pattern. Similarly, at this point of time also, they follow different education system. They follow a different type of learning system. In the mixing, a new type of education system will emerge gradually. That's what we are going to see in the Indian culture. You note down this. Now I will give. In this social complex, they have designed 4 Varna system. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. 4-fold Varna system. Note down up to here. So this process is very, very continuous throughout our history. Later, these traditions are going to enter here. These traditions are coming to here. These traditions are entering here, into here. That is how the Aryan culture gradually expanded throughout the Indian subcontinent. This already came under Aryan fold, early Vedic period. Already Aryan elements are already here, entered into Gangetic. And in future we are going to see this expansion into other parts also. That is why this Varna system became almost universal in every part of Indian subcontinent gradually. But at this point of time, 1000 to 600, this is limited to this area. Just you tell me whether you have done or not. Then I will continue to the next topic. I will give you a few points. You are going to write a few points, small points on each and everything. Now audible? Now these warriors become Kshatriyas. Now profession, they were fighters. Now new names emerged in the literature. These people were called Kshatriyas. And this, one of the priestly class, Brahmanas, became important social segment. When it comes to common people, the term common, do you remember? The term given in Vedic text, Rig Veda, vis, it becomes Vaishya. And in early Vedic time period, we heard the terms like dasa, dasyos. This is in early Vedic period. This is Indus region. These Aryan elements, non-Aryan elements, integration. When it comes to later Vedic, this is Gangetic Valley. Comparing with Indus Valley, in Gangetic Valley, more population. More population, that means more Aryan people as well as more non-Aryans also. More Aryans plus more non-Aryans. Now this interaction is high interaction between both. Because of this, the fourth segment emerged, Shudras. Now in the religious order, they gave Brahmanas first status, Kshatriya second status, Vaishya third status, Shudra fourth status. Because the knowledge is in the hands of Brahmanas, Vedic literature, hymns are composed by this priestly class, and in this order, in the hierarchy, privileges wise, first priority is given to this, second priority to this section, third priority to this, fourth priority to this. You write up to here. I will give one question. This question is useful from now onwards. You note down up to here. Then I will give one question. Open. All right, done? Okay, then. Write this question. This is Varna system, fourfold Varna system. But this is the theoretical model. You write this one question. Theoretical model of society is fourfold Varna system. Not there? Fourfold Varna system is theoretical model. But if you see the practical, from now onwards, you are going to see the violation of this. Theoretically, it is expected. Even in Brahmanical text, one of the duties of Kshatriya is to protect this fourfold Varna system. But in our history, in later Vedic, Mauryans, post-Mauryan, Guptas, post-Guptas, we are going to see so many things that we are going to see the incidents like Kshatriyas for ruling, Brahmanas for priestly class, Vaishya for common agriculture, other trading activities, Shudras for serving these three. But in history, we are going to see that Vaishyas are going to rule. For example, Guptas. Example how Vaishyas are going to become ruling class. Shudras are going to become ruling class. Practically, it is not going to be as rigid as we think. And when many foreign invaders come, like Shakas, Kushanas, Hunas, they are also going to come. They are tribal people in Central Asian society. But once they come, some of them are going to become this, some of them are going to become this, some of them are going to become this. This is assimilation power of Indian society. You write one point here. The Varna system you write one context, one statement. The Varna system or concept. The Varna system or concept may always have been largely a theoretical model. Largely a theoretical model. Largely a theoretical model and never an actual description of society. This statement is 2013 UPSC question. The Varna concept may always have been largely a theoretical model and never an actual description of society. Full stop. Comment in the context of ancient India. Comment in the context of ancient India. Is all right? This is Varna system. Remaining parts, when it comes to society, we are going to see this is Varna system. Other elements of like family, condition of women, condition of Shudras, and other elements also we are going to continue tomorrow. Tomorrow we will finish later Vedic time period. Up to here, is it clear how society is evolving from one stage to the other stage? Is it clear, online students? If you have doubts, you can ask me. So far. All right. Today we will stop here. Tomorrow we will continue. Some elements of society will come tomorrow and art and culture or religion part. Tomorrow we are going to finish later Vedic period. I will give you questions also how UPSC asked various questions in this chapter also. All right. Okay. Thank you.